Hello, welcome to Pearlwood Studio. My name is Brandon, and in today's video I'll be showing you this beautiful custom baby gate that I just made. I just made this for a client in Los Angeles, and the build process went pretty well overall. However, there were a few things that I had to kind of repair and fix throughout the process, which you'll see later in the video. So enjoy the video, and I'll be kind of walking you through the process as I go. And of course, here's Lacey, our shop cat, doing a little slide down my windshield. So I'm not sure how I did it, but I ended up getting almost twice as much wood as I needed for this project. But as a full-time woodworker, that's never a bad thing to have extra wood on hand, because I ended up using this to build the custom couches that I actually just made the other video for that you can check out on our channel. Before I start actually milling the lumber, I like to cut it down into smaller sized pieces, usually leaving about an inch to inch and a half extra length. That way, after everything is nice and flat and straight, I can go back and cut a nice square cut on the end. One important thing to note is when you're doing cutting on the table saw, there are different types of blades to use. Now here I'm switching from a cross-cutting blade to a rip-cutting blade. And SawStop makes it really easy to do that, and it makes the cuts a lot cleaner and smoother. One of the challenges in this project was actually in the filming, simply because there was so many repetitive cuts and processes that I had to go through that in order to make it interesting and not just super boring and repetitive, I did have to cut out a lot of the processes. As many of you know, a lot of the wood that you get from a lumber yard is not straight or flat. So the most important part in any of my projects is always to mill the lumber in the beginning on the jointer, then sending it through the planer just to get really clean, flat edges. Now here I'm on the router table, and I'm putting small bevels on each of these corners because obviously it is a baby gate, so I don't want any of the corners to be too sharp so that the child will not be injured if they slip and hit a corner or run their fingers down it or something like that. Here I'm using a dado stack, which is essentially a table saw blade with multiple blades put together. And what that does is it creates kind of this channel, this wide cut, as you can see here. And right now I am basically putting notches in the top and bottom pieces of the gate so that the vertical slats can sit in between those notches and be locked in place. Once you've done enough woodworking, you start to put together processes for yourself to kind of help out and make sure that you don't have to do things twice. For instance, you saw that I had these two pieces taped together and I ran them through the table saw all at once. And that's to make it more efficient, as well as to make sure everything's lining up properly. And then it's on to the drill press to pre-drill all of my holes. About 136 holes. And this is what I meant by the process getting a little repetitive. Here I'm using a slightly larger drill bit to countersink so that my screw heads can sit within the wood instead of above. I'm always trying to streamline my processes and make things more efficient in the shop. And I was realizing that sanding these one by one was just taking way too long. So I found out that I can clamp all of them together on my bench top like this, and then kind of line them up, and then use my 6-inch sander to sand all the faces at once, and then flip them over and repeat the process. And this saved me a lot of time. Then it's on to the next process, which is the actual assembly of the baby gate. Now, I went through multiple iterations of how to actually do this, not only to achieve the visual effect that I wanted to go for, but also to keep things perfectly sturdy and lined up. And this is the method that I chose to try the first time, which you'll see in a second didn't turn out too great. And I ended up having to tear it all apart. Now, getting it to about this point with the assembly probably took me about 4 hours. So as you can imagine, there was some frustration that set in, but I knew that that wasn't going to help me in doing this project. So I continued to think about it and brainstorm with other woodworkers and ended up finding a better solution, which you'll see in a second. So to expand on why I ended up tearing the gate apart, I had used some blocks that I was putting in between the slats, and I glued and nailed them in place. And somewhere along the line, a micro error started occurring and compounded to where the entire gate was twisted about 3/4 of an inch, which to my standards was not good enough. So I ended up coming up with this idea to make a piece, essentially that's a half lap joint that goes between the slats, as well as each slat gets notched out for the piece to go in between. So this method ended up being super quick for assembly. I essentially just kind of lay everything in place like I am here, and everything fit really snugly. The only issue that I had was the cross grain occasionally started to break, so I did have to do a few repairs and glue those back in place and make sure nothing was too tight. But at the end of the day, everything worked out really well with that. With this project, I wanted to create a handmade wooden latch that was really minimal and kind of blended into the gate. Now this was definitely a challenge, and as you can see here, I kind of had to draw up some plans, do some real-life mock-ups, and I wanted it to be spring-loaded so that I could kind of self-latch back in place when the gate was closed. So I did have to play around with this for quite a while and figure out how to put the spring within, but I figured it out and it turned out great. So here's the first glimpse at the gate fully done. And huge shout out to Adrian for helping me move it in place. Thanks, Adrian. And now it's time for the most important part, installation. So as you can see here, they had this old kind of foldable baby gate, but it just wasn't aesthetic, and they're planning on having more kids. So that's why they wanted a more permanent solution that they could keep more long term. So this is definitely an unusual baby gate. I would call it more of a hinged architectural half wall. And it's got hinges on one side, as you saw me putting on a second ago. And then here I am putting these 7-inch lags through this piece that go into the frame of the house through the structural woodworking. And I'm attaching the hinges also to the woodworking. Now, the hinges are not the only thing supporting this. I did actually install some wheels underneath, so it actually rolls on the floor. So here's the first look at the custom lever that I made for this baby gate. It is spring-loaded with the spring hidden within the wood. And as you can see here, I'm just shaving down a little bit of each of them because it was sticking a tiny bit. So we want it to be easily closable and open without any hesitation. So I'm just doing a few micro adjustments until it fits just right. And with that, installation is complete. Now I'll just do a quick cleanup and observe my work that I just completed. It's always a great feeling when everything works out and you can leave the job site knowing that everything fits perfectly and the customer's happy. I always try to take a few minutes at the end of every job when I'm still on the site to really just appreciate kind of what I've just created. A lot of times we can get caught up as artists in this routine of just make it and move on, but I really like to take some time to just observe and appreciate the skill that I do have and all that I've accomplished, as well as the hard times, the things that I didn't do right. the things that I had to learn from, and what I do differently next time. Overall, I'd say I'm really happy with how this project turned out, but I would love to know, what do you think? Do you like this style? Do you like this project? And would you want one in your home? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, thank you so much for your support. Your likes, follows, and subscribes mean so much. My name's Brandon again, and I will see you guys in the next video.